Welcome to another episode of Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and this is my husband and co-host, Geoffrey Tumlin.
Yellow! Welcome to the podcast where we try to inspire better work performance. Thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on Management Muse. I'm Cindi Baldi, your host, and my co-host, Geoffrey Tumlin.
Yellow.
And we are going to be talking today about
Money.
Yep,
Money.
pay.
It's got it sitting right here on the table. Money. I've got a visual aid. Brought it. Money.
Well, that's only if you're watching on video.
Oh, right. If you're not on video.
Yeah.
I'm holding up some money.
Yep. So we're going to talk about some of the ways that people sort of mess it up at work, maybe a little
For
bit.
pay. Yeah.
For pay.
How people end up underpaid. Because we see this all the time. So this is the pay episode.
Mm-hmm.
How mistakes we see a lot and how to kind of unwind that. The first one is for some reason, and I mean, we could go on with example after example, but I'll give you a good example. We always promise confidentiality to the people we talk with. So we have to change up a lot of details and stuff. But there's a place that we worked for many, many years, and their CEO took a low pay package when he started.
And then nobody else could get paid actually market rate because nobody could get paid more than the CEO.
It was nuts.
And that CEO stayed there forever, like not getting really paid enough. And that's
he was a great CEO.
He's a great CEO, way above what he was getting paid, but also like they
screwed
really
the whole
couldn't
organization.
Get a number 2 or number 3 because they couldn't
right.
pay market
more than
value.
the CEO. Right. And they would raise the CEO's pay over the years, but only by whatever, so many percent. 5% here. It doesn't matter. When the guy was probably making half of what he should have been making. I mean, that's probably realistic. And he did a great job. And this isn't just about CEOs. That's just the first example we use. This happens all through the organization. But the CEO one is particularly galling because those jobs are hard. Like we know a lot of CEOs who do the work well, but it's a hard job.
That CEO actually chose to not be paid full market value.
Original sin.
Knew it and accepted it and didn't try to change it. But what is so egregious about it is the cascading effect on everybody else. And then you can't hire. It was a top-notch organization and they couldn't hire top-notch people for it because nobody was going to take
pennies
half of what they were.
Or whatever. In this case, they needed to hire 2 or 3 other people right under the CEO over the years as the company grew and expanded. And they couldn't because then those people were underpaid if they took so many small percentage less than the CEO.
Right. So you're in this situation where instead of hiring somebody who's qualified for the job, you have to gamble on somebody you think has the talent to eventually become qualified for the job. Yeah. And that sometimes works.
Yeah.
But oftentimes doesn't.
Yeah. And so that's the original sin. The original sin of why people, and it sounds a little bit circular, but it's not. The original sin of why people make less than they should is that they accept a job making less than they should and then think that somehow it will magically right itself. And that almost never happens.
Yeah.
Occasionally, but when we've seen it be successful, where somebody's like, hey, you need to take this job, take it now, give me a few months, and then we'll get it through the board in the next budget cycle. When that happens, it's tight. And you and I, we're still nervous when we have to advise people about taking a job for less than they want to make with the promise
time flies and things don't get done.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea to take a job where they're not just paying you. Because why wouldn't they just pay you the amount that they know that they ought to be paying you? It's usually because they don't actually have the resources to be able to afford you.
Right.
And that is sad for that company, but you shouldn't be making up for that as a person.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's the original sin. Saying yes when you should say no. When more likely it's signaling to you, they this company isn't for you.
Well, this company doesn't have the resources to
you've got
actually
more horsepower.
hire you. Yeah. On a lower level. So the CEO is, part of the original sin, but I think he bought into actually being paid low. So he was okay with it. Again, all sorts of problems from that. But then we have another client who worked for an organization that we work with. And it was the number 2 who basically put her with me and said, she's not getting paid enough. Help her. And the problem is that the number 1 in the company was like, well, it doesn't matter that she's drastically lower paid than anybody else who has had one of the jobs that she had. She had like 3 different jobs. We laid out a price. She agreed to the price. That's market value. So the CEO was like completely about, look, you agreed to it. That means it's okay with you. I see no reason why I need to negotiate it.
Yeah.
And the number 2 was mortified. And so the number 2 put her with me and was like, help her fix this.
Right. The CEO hired somebody for less, but it wasn't the number 2 person. It was somebody else in the organization.
Right. The number 2 was looking out for that person.
Yeah. And how did that story end? What eventually happened?
A 40% increase in pay.
40?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was you getting her to go.
I can't always do 40%.
Wow.
But that is how badly underpaid she was.
That's nuts.
And that is the difference between, like, when you're on the market, you have to do like the research. You have to get out there and use Google and LinkedIn and Indeed and figure out like what other people in your profession and in the region are getting. You have to pick up the phone and make phone calls. Like, people don't like to tell you what they make, but they will tell you like,
it's not a mystery. And
sometimes it's not a mystery. Like anything that's public, you can find out the pay.
Yeah.
And you can look up ads for those jobs in other organizations. And sometimes, and especially in some states, they have to post the pay. But you can also just pick up the phone and be like, I'm applying for this job. I know you're in this job, or you've had it recently. What would be fair for me to expect for a salary given my credentials? Which is a different question than asking somebody, what do you earn?
Yeah. Yeah. And you look at your LinkedIn, you look at your, who do you know who has a similar job?
Yeah. LinkedIn is great because you can actually do a search by job and area. I mean, it's been a while since I've done this, but you could really vector it down, and then it'll tell you who's connected to you to help get to that person.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important that this is not a negotiation discussion.
No, but it is in the very beginning.
Piece.
There's a piece of this that is negotiation. And, what is happening is too many times people rely on the organization to know what they should be paying you, what is fair value. But this is not how organizations are run. Organizations do a market analysis on jobs at some point, maybe annually, maybe less than annually.
Oh, they don't do it annually.
Some of them do, but maybe less than. It's a lot of work.
A ton of work.
And so they're coming at you.
Not only is it a ton of work, then you have to pay people more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so what they're coming at you with that they think is fair based on their research is outdated. And that's especially important.
Can be. Yeah. They haven't done it in a while.
Yeah. If they haven't done it in a while. And that's especially important. And most likely it is. Because even if they did 6 months ago, that's not current. Especially in an environment that is rapidly changing. So, you got to do your own research. And people make a mistake. They don't do their own research. And then they're only applying to like one job, or they stop applying when they get the option for one job. Like you need multiple options going at once. So that way you also get a sense for what you're actually valued at by multiple people, but also like you're not desperate. Do you have other options? So I think that the negotiation piece is just the first piece. That's the original sin of people basically being just grateful that a job fell in their lap and relying on the organization to be like, okay, this is how much you should be paid.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do a whole podcast, maybe multiple, on negotiation. This touches on it, but we're talking, and I'm thinking right now about cases where people are making tens of thousands of dollars. And in the case you gave the CEO, he's probably underpaid by $100,000 and some thousand.
And the other one I gave was she was underpaid by about $50,000. So
yeah. I mean, huge deltas between the job that they're doing and where it would be paid almost anywhere else within a 200-mile radius. And as you point out, I mean, look, it's, internet people.
This is the best time ever.
Yeah, you get these comparisons and then be willing to ask for what you're worth. Let me say it differently. Just be willing to ask for the average of what this job goes for. Because the egregious faults we see are people taking work that pays like a third or more less than it should. And you and I see that. So we see that so often. That's why we're having this podcast. If you're listening to this podcast, stop what you're doing and Google your job right now in your area. Google what you're doing, what's the salary, and if what comes up is worth a third more than what you're making, then this is your podcast. If you're looking for a job and you're tempted to take something that pays a lot less than you should, and hey, if you've already made your money and look, I got another example. This podcast is going to be like 500 hours. And so there's this place that I work. Because even I was going to say, well, if you made your money, then you can just go and take a job that's pays a lot less, and it'll, that's okay. I could see, and actually I can't, because I coach people and they have their money, and so they're like, well, I'm going crazy at the house, so I'm going to go get a job and I'm going to go be a blank, and so this is a job category then that they shouldn't be in, that they're fairly senior executives who go take a brainless job, and within a week, everybody knows how much they can do. And so the work starts piling on. Mm. And so within a matter of a few months, they signed up for in the case that I'm thinking of, the person signed up for a $60,000 job. They'd had a career making probably 200 and something thousand. Don't need any money, have a retirement. I'll take a $60,000 job. It gives me a purpose. I like the company.
I like what they stand for.
And within so many months, the job has puffed itself up to another $200,000 job. And this person is not happy because she's back to the bad old days of when she was waking up at night worried about stuff and all these projects and how am I going to do all these deadlines
and not getting paid.
Of course she's not getting paid
because she took the job that was lower. I mean, it's not the organization's fault necessarily. No. They're just not paying that close of attention.
Not paying attention.
And that leads to number 2 sin, is thinking that if you do a good job,
they'll notice
and they'll compensate you.
We know and they're busy.
Yeah. They're not thinking about you.
They're busy. Nope. Got a million other things going on.
And they assume that if you have taken it on,
you're good.
That you're not saying anything about money, that you're good.
You're good. Yep.
And they're psyched to have you.
Delighted. And on to the next fire.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, exactly. On to the next fire. They're not going to, in most cases, unless like that, that one COO that I talked about earlier who was beside himself because it was embarrassing what they were paying this person.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, nobody notices that.
Yeah. I think that is well worth being the second sin, is this belief that the organization will notice and the pay will follow.
And so let's talk about what you do.
Here's how this usually presents itself to me is I'm talking with somebody and then they mention something about money and thinking that they should make a little more. And I'm like, all right, well, how much more do you think? And they're like, well, I looked, if they looked, I looked and jobs like mine tend to pay about 50% more. And I'm like, what? What do you make? And they tell me. And I'm like, what? Okay, we got to fix this. Who do you talk to about this? And then they tell me, and I'm like, all right, who are your best allies? And how's your relationship with that person? You need to ask. Do you have any other allies? What's your last big victory? Do you have if you haven't had a victory in the last few months, do you have something big coming up? And you can ask on the other side of that, like the old Madonna song, what have you done for me lately? I mean, so
that was Janet Jackson.
Oh, all right. I always thought that was Madonna. But what have you done for me lately? So you have a comparison. So the number you're asking for makes sense. Here's this job here. Here's this job here. This is what they're making. I'd like to ask for the number in the middle of this. The reason that I think that I'm worth it is this victory here and this victory here, one of which was recent. Will you please consider it? And then let them go to work for you. And you'll have helped them help you by having a couple of victories, by asking the right person, meaning usually it's your direct supervisor. But there may be other people, may have to go up a level or more or whatever, whatever the process is. It's different in every company. But the fundamentals are three things. Have a reasonable comparison of why you're asking for the number. This job makes this job makes this. Could be external, could be internal. Reasonable comparison. What have you done for them lately? Something that you've done that was a victory. And then you ask with the right person. Usually it's your supervisor.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll say about the asking is be prepared to be put off until the budget is being figured out again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
especially if you got to go way up.
Right. So, yes, strike while the iron is hot on your successes and ask for it and make it known that that's what you're looking for. But be prepared that they're probably going to put you off until the next budget cycle, which will be sometime in that year.
Yep.
And give them a little reminder beforehand. And hopefully you continue to have other successes that you can update them with as to, more ammunition that they can go in with.
Yep. Yep. You ready for a third sin?
Sure.
Not being willing to move. Not being willing to switch companies. Not being willing to take a different job within the same company. To get out of the current box that you're in. I mean, the majority, 60% of these underpayments that we see is somebody who's stuck with a company for too long.
Yeah.
Or, too long. It's
not too long. It's just a long time.
Yeah.
Because, again, it depends on what, the external market is doing. At best, inside an organization, you're typically getting 3%. But if, the market for your job is growing faster than cost of living, then every year you stay, you're falling behind.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, it's not an altruism to say staying means that you're automatically falling behind. It's that mix between what the environment is doing and then what you're getting inside your organization. And so, and again, most organizations don't do the homework and go, oh my goodness, we're paying this class of people so much less than market value. And so we need to give them all raises unless they're in a labor crisis. So if you've been in an organization for a while, that's the tendency. That's why the mechanism for why you may actually be getting paid drastically less than if you move to an external job.
Yeah. You and I could talk for a long time about people who've basically changed their entire financial life by moving. moving a job. You don't even have to move the city.
Oh, you just have to move a job.
Yeah.
But the reason why people don't move jobs is
there's many.
But there's many, but it's mostly boils down to uncertainty.
Yeah. Sure.
You know, they know what they've got.
The kids are in school.
They know what they've got there. Yeah. They know the relationships that they have. And that's not invalid.
Yeah.
It's not. Like, if you have a boss and coworkers you love and you're going to make 10% more somewhere else, well, okay. I could see making that decision. Like 10% is minor, like a 10, 20%. Right. Most people will suck down 20% to be in a place that they really love, doing something that they feel is important. Once you get above like 20%.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to note in this conversation that you and I are having, we're not encouraging people to leave a good setup with people you love and a mission and a company you believe in, whose values you support, for 5% more. I mean, you can, but
there's a value in that.
Yeah, we're talking about we run across people who make a third or more less than they should make all the time. And it's an error. Either it's an error of, in these kind of big three that we've talked about so far in our discussion, it's the kind of first error you make where you've said yes to a low number at the beginning and that just followed you around like a weight around your ankles. Or second, you subscribe to this belief, if I just do a great job, everybody will notice and I'll get paid more. And that's not what happens. When you do a great job, no one notices because there are fires everywhere. And the people you need to notice are insanely busy. And so it doesn't happen. The better I know it's so weird to say, but in some ways, the better you do, the less you're noticed, or the less you're, kind of sticking out as, hey, we need to stop and pay this person more. And then the third piece is this idea that, well, I can't move, or I can't leave this company, or here are my reasons why. And then you're at the mercy of one employer giving you a yes or no. Whereas if you're willing to entertain the possibilities, then all of a sudden, instead of just one offer, there's whatever, pick a number. But you've drastically expanded the pie and increased the chances that you'll be more likely to get paid what you're worth.
Hello, Musers. Now it's time for commercial break.
All right. Speaking of money, let's talk about your surveys.
Well, so we can do all sorts of surveys. The one that we typically talk about is a comprehensive survey that looks at culture, pretty important attitudes that are typically desirable to understand. And then communication. We look at all three of those. And then we meet with the executive team and really whoever else they want in there. It's up to them. I've actually debriefed an entire organization before.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so it's whatever they want. But we have better conversations usually because we're going through and pulling out the things that they find most interesting and then pulling it down to approximately 3 things that they're most proud of and 3 things that they actually want to put effort towards in the next year.
It's a gigantic assessment based on science. And as Cindy mentioned, culture, communication, and then engagement.
And unlike other surveys, I think one of the other distinctive features of it is, unlike other surveys, we actually do a statistical analysis.
Yep.
So
it's not flat. It's not 2D.
Right.
It's a 3D. You can't do this on SurveyMonkey.
Right.
Because it's actually probability, statistical based, and science under it. Our clients who do it have done it for years. Some of them coming up on a decade now. Mm-hmm. So we've only been doing it for, I think we're in our 9th year. Mm-hmm. And we have clients, this is their 9th year of doing it. Yeah, it's a great survey.
And the benefits are obviously a better understanding of your organization, sometimes validation of what you already feel like is happening, but You just want the validation that is actually, your perceptions are correct. And sometimes it dispels, because sometimes like the people who are loudest are not actually the majority. And the survey clears the air on that. It functions to basically start conversations in the executive team about what is most important for the organization today and to focus on in the next year.
Yep. Lets you know what's going on in the company. It's a darn good survey. Culsure.com. Cindy's company, Culsure, CULSURE.com.
But the important thing is that there's no T.
There's no T.
Only S.
Culsure, CULSURE.com. All of these require some comfort in a conversation that a lot of people are uncomfortable in. Basically, that conversation where you're correlating the work that you do to a dollar figure. And you and I, we have a version of this conversation all the time, and we're surprised that there aren't more consultants. It's a great life. It's fun. It's novel. Get to travel, meet new people. The pay is good. And one of the reasons is because, and even people we know who we try to encourage to be consultants, they're like, I can't do that. I can't ask for money. You don't have to ask for money every day, but can you ask for money once every 5 years? Because if you, that's it, just once every 5 years. Maybe it's not that far apart. I don't know. But
it's not even annual though.
No, definitely not. But if you can do that, you can make sure that you're within a decent ballpark. So, I mean, I'm reminded of the research many years ago about most people, if they feel like they're being paid fairly, don't think about money. They just go and do the job. If you're a quarter to a third low or more, then do something. Don't just accept that, because if you'll permit me to exaggerate, to make a point, it will never get better. The people you're counting on to make it better are busy
and you're not
a million
a
other
problem.
things.
And
you're not a problem.
And as soon as you are a problem, you're not getting a raise. So,
Yeah.
So you can't become the problem to get the attention. You actually you need to maintain being a good employee and churning it out, but you just have to basically make people aware that what you're doing isn't normal. It isn't what other people doing your job are doing, that you're bringing in a lot of value with the other stuff that you're doing for the organization.
Yeah. We had somebody we know, there was a lot of turnover at his company, and every year and a half or so, they would ask him to basically temporarily take over somebody else's job. Like, you keep doing yours, but then add this other one. And he was like, okay, that'll cost you half of their pay. I'll do it, and I'll make you a great deal. But the only way I do it is you take half of what they made and give it to me. And this dude was highly paid. And so he would get a huge bump in his pay while this would come on. And then it would, and I always loved it because, it was awesome, right?
Well, it's actually a reasonable thing that you should do, because too many times the opposite happens where like the difference is that him forcing them to pay half of the other salary on top of his current salary makes them aware that he's filling in temporarily to pull them out of a problem. Yeah. Whereas if you just take over that job, you're never going to hear from them again.
May not be pretty. It's
congratulations, have two jobs.
It's like taking in a cat.
Pay.
It's like taking in a cat, right?
Yeah.
We're putting the milk out for the cat. Yeah. All of a sudden you're double pay.
Right. So, I mean, like, there does need to be a level of pain exerted on the organization.
Right. And there was, because HR screamed murder. We can't do, like, I love HR, except when I don't. And this is one of those cases where I don't. Like, HR is like, we can't do that. And he's like, okay, then go hire somebody. You can do that. Well, we can't find somebody and we need somebody for now. Like, the job couldn't be left by. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, figure it out. And eventually they did, because of course you can. Of course you can.
They were already paying somebody full salary.
Come on.
They could certainly pay somebody half salary to do it.
No. It was HR wasn't saying we didn't have the money. They're saying this can't be done. Like, we can't break his bracket.
Right. I get they like their bands.
Yeah, they like
but
their
he
brackets.
was already out of the band.
He is already it was brilliant because it made it painful enough for the company to where they didn't want this to persist. And he got actual recognition for doing the job. Mm-hmm. Not just, hey, good job. And then I'm on to the next and you're doing this job forever.
Forever.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Which is how my first example, the person the CEO sent to me, that's how she got 3 jobs. Because she was already hired in at too low of a rate for the one job.
Yeah.
And she was extremely competent. And then they threw on another job and she did a pretty good job at that too. And they didn't have to pay her anything else. And then somebody else quit. And then she got a 3rd job.
No, it sounds crazy, but it happens.
I got a 4th sin.
All right, lay it on me.
More true for women than men based on studies. But when you are applying for a job, you aren't applying for a job and the pay based on what you currently are able to do. The expectation with hiring somebody is that they've got like the foundation to make them a good candidate. But we expect that when they come in, they're going to grow and learn.
Yeah.
And so you need to actually be applying for that job that's next. And the salary that's next, not the salary that you're currently at with the skill set that you've already locked in.
Yeah. I think the studies you're referring to are the ones where basically men are willing to apply for jobs they're not qualified for.
It actually is funny. I remember the HBR article. I don't remember who wrote it, but it's got a chicken wearing a peacock's feathers.
Yeah.
And that's like the men who are like willing to
and then sometimes they get it.
Look like the peacock when they're a chicken and they get the job and then they become the peacock.
Yeah. I think that's what you're talking about. Yeah. They had done some subsequent findings in MBA programs and found that the women in MBA programs had started to cut that gap. But I think the general.
Well, that's different mechanisms. So that study that you're talking about is this past year, and that is within that same MBA program where they basically took their female students and put them through a treatment of negotiation skills.
Was that Michigan or something?
It was one of the big ones like that. And
then they did better.
And so they actually then did negetogate, because the original study was women don't negotiate.
Yeah.
Well, this group actually was negotiating, and the finding was still that they weren't getting equal even after asking.
Really? I thought they narrowed the gap with the treatment.
They did narrow it, but there's still a gap.
Okay. All right.
I think I'm pretty sure that's the way that study went.
Okay.
But the big thing was it ruins the argument or doesn't ruin the argument, because again, these women got a treatment.
Right.
They learned how to negotiate.
The training, the negotiation training.
Right.
Which is a piece of what we're advocating.
Right. But what they were saying is, like, previously with the former study, it was women don't negotiate, and that explains the pay gap. Well, now these women were negotiating and we still have a pay gap.
Okay.
So there's other stuff going on.
Yeah. Okay. But the original sin, or the number 4 that you were populating here, is that sometimes people in general, although you're saying, yes, it happens more with women than men, but sometimes people basically go for jobs that aren't as much of a stretch as they could be.
They're more lateral than not. Yeah. And because of that, then you're also not getting a pay commiserate with a stretch job.
Yeah. Those places we work, you'll remember who I'm talking about, but there was this person, and he was in a entry-level manager position in this company, and basically in a nice way demanded to be mentored by the CEO, because he was going to be a CEO one day. And everybody laughed at the guy. They laughed.
I didn't laugh at that guy.
I didn't laugh. Okay. I thought, wow, he's really.
Yeah, we
but
like the
basically,
guy.
he signed up as a entry-level manager, demanded to be mentored by the CEO. The CEO, for a variety of reasons, took pity on him and said, okay. And I'll be darned if like 3 years, 3?
I mean, it might have been 3.
The dude was a CEO. Now, it was of a relatively
smaller organization.
Yeah,
he had to lead the organization.
He did it.
But yeah, he did it.
Everything.
And I don't know why, if they've listened to that man's story, I don't know why they would have ever laughed at that.
Everything that we have talked about in this podcast, he was the opposite. He always was willing. He was willing to move. He was willing to ask. He was
willing to take like the low end position to basically find the route to go to to find the path, essentially. But he wasn't going to stay on that path long.
No, and he never took low pay.
No.
He took the appropriate pay for the entry-level manager job he had. And then when he went so many years later to become a CEO, I think he only made 2 jumps. First ever manager job, and then he did a second jump, and then he did a third.
Yes, it's very fast trajectory.
And that doesn't have to be you. But if you're listening to this podcast and you've had the same job for 8 years and you've only gotten small increments of pay, look, what are you doing? If you're motivated enough to listen to podcasts about management and your pay hasn't moved, right?
Yeah.
Like,
now pay
go do something.
Tends to move with ability. And so, and like that goes back to the sin of basically taking on other jobs and not getting compensated for it. Like, you are learning new skills and greater ability. You should be more marketable to be able to have a higher paying job, which means a promotion embedded in that higher paying job.
Right. Yes. Yeah. But none of that just happens. This guy who we're talking about is a CEO of a decent sized organization, and he's probably 33. He's a smart guy, but he's not a genius. Everything that we're pointing out is a sin for why people don't make as much money as they should. He has none of those problems.
Right.
Not one. And he's CEO at 32, making plenty of money.
By the way, was also a very nice person who everybody universally loved, even if they were sort of making fun of him. Everybody loved him. It's not that he was just an aggressive jerk. He wasn't. He was helping out everybody all along. He was building relationships. Everybody trusted him. Everybody liked him. He just knew he felt like he knew what he was ready for. And then he went out and found somebody who was willing to give him the opportunity. And then he proved it. And then he mastered that job. And then he found the next job, which was the CEO job. And so he just didn't wait for somebody to wrap their arms around him and be like, oh, you're ready.
Yep.
He made the decision about when he was ready. But he was not like, I think sometimes people feel like they have to be like more aggressive or, a jerk about it. This guy is not a jerk.
Yeah.
He's aggressive, I guess you could say. You could say that, but he's aggressive in the nicest possible way. And the entire time he's running around thinking about other people, helping them out while also getting the job done.
Yeah. If I can take a shot at summarize some of the things we're saying. The reason we chose this topic is because we experience a lot of people who are profoundly underpaid. And by profoundly, I mean anywhere from a quarter or more less than what regular people in similar jobs are making. And in some cases, this has gone on for years. In some cases, the gap is bigger than that. There are a lot of reasons why this happens. The original sin of taking a job for less money than you're worth. The sin of thinking that just good performance is going to make this all even out and the money is going to follow when the people you're counting on are so crazy busy that just doesn't happen. Not being willing to move, and then not being willing to stretch yourself for another job. And in so doing, not being able to make a jump as big as you might otherwise be able to. And you don't have to be a ruthless job jumper to make what you're worth, but you have to be able to fundamentally evaluate, am I underpaid? And if so, begin the steps of getting a significant pay raise. And if your company can't do it, then you either have to leave or you have to stay being underpaid.
And if you are okay with that, at least then you're making an informed decision.
Yeah. You and we don't recommend that. We do not recommend people being underpaid.
No, we don't. But if you love your boss that much, and you love your coworkers that much, and you love the mission of the organization that much, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong to stay, but you need to know. You need to know what you're trading off, and you need to make that decision.
Yes. You're still going to work hard. The time is still going to pass, and one day you're going to look up. And it's not all about money, but money is a major way that the recognition of the work that you're doing is acknowledged. And so that's why we wanted to talk about it in this episode.
Right.
And yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of the Management Muse.
Money edition.
The Money Pay edition. Hopefully
Show me the money edition.
Some of you go in and start asking for some of this.
Mint some rich people out of this episode.
Yeah. And we appreciate likes, shares, stars, follows, downloads.
Do it.
All of the above.
Yep. Tell your friend.
All right. We'll see you next time.
So long.
Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to learn more about the topic, check out our show notes. And if you want to help us out, like, share, subscribe, and 5 stars are all deeply appreciated. See you next time on the Management Muse.